Welcome to Grow and Learn and to Heal and Learn. This is Zorina. Today I'm bringing in a man who was shot 4 times in the head, and I brought you his story about a month ago. This man is the creator of the Clear Belief System. He's a world-renowned author, psychologist, coach, speaker, Lion Goodman. Last time we talked about the Clear Beliefs Revolution, and today we're going to be talking about another passion of his, another child of his, creative child, the men's tribe. And so today we're going to be talking about the men's tribe revolution. I'm welcoming Lion Goodman.
Thank you, Zorina. It's great to see you again. A pleasure to be here as always.
Wonderful to have you. Thanks for coming back. Lion, I am not going to ask you to repeat the whole story. It was a very engaging story that you told us last time. So everybody go back and watch the Clear Beliefs Revolution on Heal and Learn. You can also listen to it on the Grow and Learn podcast and hear the whole story of how Lion came to be as a professional, as an expert in clearing beliefs, in consciousness, in everything that he does. But I want to hear now about something that I'm also very curious about, because it's aligned with my values, and this is men's circles, women's circles, returning to the authentic man, the authentic woman. Am I coming close to what the tribe of men is about, Lion?
Absolutely, absolutely. How do we become more ourselves in community? How do we help each other become more honest, in integrity, authentic, all of that? Yeah, it's such an important topic, and women got started in the early feminist days, where women gathered together and talked about the things that were happening. And I think the men got jealous because a few men started men's groups, to sort of follow on. Well, if the women are doing it, we should do it too. And that was in the very early days of the men's movement. And that has blossomed into some very large organizations, lots of small circles, and men are getting together to help each other become better men.
Okay, so how long ago did you start this movement? Because you started it, you're the founder of the Tribe of Men.
Well, I'm the founder of a particular organization called the Tribe of Men, but I've been involved in the men's movement for about, how old am I now? For about 40 years. And that was the early days of the men's movement. There were people like Robert Bly, the poet, who was writing beautiful books about men's work. And there were a few very, very important psychologists and community members that said, we have a story too. The story of men is mythic. Who have men been? Who have we been? What are our roles that we've been forced to play? And not everybody fits into those roles. And so what happens to the outliers? What happens to the people who aren't big macho guys who can protect and defend? And why are we protecting and defending? And who got us into those positions in the first place? So the movement started as a mythopoetic movement, where we were looking at myths and trying to understand the history of men and the places we were put, the roles we were put into, and how injurious they were to who we are as people. In the same way that women were put into specific roles, and the barefoot wife at home, having babies, that was as injurious to women as men have to go off and be fodder in the war against some other tribe. So it was really examining all of these ways that humans have been channeled into particular roles and behaviors that are not who we are. They're just old stories.
And when you say that you examine this, is this a developing process, or did you kind of define already the characteristics, the values, everything that defines a man? Do you have this as a set of characteristics of what is a man?
Well, this is a question that we bring up in our men's circles, which is what really constitutes a man. What are the myths and the beliefs? I'm a specialist in beliefs. What do we believe we're supposed to be? How are we programmed by our parents and our culture and our society and our religion to be a certain way? And is that true? You used the word authentic before. Is that truly us, or is that just a program that we adopted? So think about elementary school. You know, there's the bully kids, the kids that have become the tough guys. And then there's the victims who get pummeled by the bullies. And there's the observers. And then there's cliques in junior high school where, you know, a gaggle of women get together and a gaggle of men get together. And there's the football players. And then there's the geeks and there's the nerds. And, you know, and so we are tribal beings. We tend to want to be like people like us, and so we naturally tend toward moving into these groups. And once you move into a group, you adopt their beliefs and their behaviors, and then you leave who you really are behind when you start becoming like you are expected to act. Big boys don't cry. This is an example of a belief that got pummeled into us as children. You know, stop crying, be a man, you know, no pain, no gain. This is a way of channeling boys into a particular kind of manhood. And when we really examine it, we find out that it was false, that it was just a belief set. It was just a role that was laid on top of us and that we had to adjust to fit in. So this happens to girls and women as well. It's just that the men had to figure it out on their own as the women had to figure it out on their own.
What are some significant differences that you've discovered between the authentic men and the men from popular culture, apart from Men Don't Cry?
Well, we have the superheroes of the comic books and the movies, right? The man who comes in and defends the people against the evildoers, and we use weapons, and you know, we get military gear. Boys get guns and play cowboys and Indians. It's us, them. It's like there's us against them, and our job is to kill them, whoever them is. And this is one of the earliest programs that has created wars for thousands of years. There's an us and there's a them. And so our job as men is to be the defenders and the aggressors and the dominators against them, whoever them is. Even in farming, the them is the insects. And so we get killer pesticides to kill those evil insects that are eating our crops, when in fact insects are important pollinators. And we now know, you know, in a natural world, insects have their role. And so this idea that we are to dominate, that we are to aggress, is just ancient programming, and it's caused more wars and destruction than it has caused goodness. You know, if a tribe is being aggressed upon, then you need defenders. But if there's no aggressors, let's live happily ever after. You know, so there's history. There's known history that of matriarchs, for example, before the masculine myths came in and took over. Matriarchal societies likely were peaceful and were generous and were prosperous. And then these hordes from the north came in and basically overthrew the goddess culture. And especially when you bring in the Abrahamic religions of Judaism and then Christianity and then Islam, really destroyed the feminine culture. And God was a man. So God told us what to do, and God told us to dominate and aggress and to kill you if you don't agree with us. So this is really the history of humanity. This idea that we there's not enough, so we need more, so we'll go and aggress you and take over whatever you have. So anyway, we're dealing with an entire cultural history for thousands of years, not just what today's society programs us.
I recently had a conversation that also touched on matriarchies, and that was in regards to AI. So how societies developing, some would say cyclically, some would say cyclically and upward, you know, developing in a different direction. But would you say that it was anyhow a natural movement and a part of human learning that these matriarchies were replaced by a more aggressive culture, so that we can finally, or not finally, but take out the learning from this experience as well. And what is the next learning in the development of this dance between the masculine and the feminine?
Well, there are many good books written by people much smarter than I am about the history of the masculine and the feminine and patriarchy and matriarchy. But it's clear that in a matriarchy there were problems, and in a patriarchy there's a lot of problems. So our goal, from my understanding of where we have been and where we're going, is to find a way to work together as males and females, as masculine and feminine. In Asia, they have the Tao. The Tao has a little bit of feminine inside the masculine and a little bit of masculine inside the feminine, and it's a flowing circle with two, fish-like interconnected parts. And that is the way we are designed to work together and to bring out the best in each other, not to dominate or control each other. And matriarchies may have been controlling in one way and patriarchies were controlling in another way. But we have to stop trying to control each other, and rather to raise each other up into the glorious beings that each individual is. In my study of history, I read about the Native Americans, and in a book called Hanta Yo, the tribe would look at a new child with great anticipation and wonder, how is this child going to grow up to be themselves and to contribute to the tribe? So a little boy might be good with an arrow, so he may grow up to be a great hunter to bring meat back for the tribe. A girl might be a great basket weaver, and she would be making baskets for the tribe. Everyone had their role in the tribe as a whole, but also their own individual genius. And so when we look at children and we look with anticipation and say, how is this child going to express their genius, their individual unique genius? That's a different way of looking at it than saying, you need to be a warrior, you need to be a hunter, you need to be a basket maker, you need to be a cook. So it's not an imposed structure, but rather one that allows each person to express themselves fully. And if we are in a cooperative society and we're all there for ourselves and each other, that's where we're going to create a sustainable civilization where everyone gets their needs taken care of.
This reminds me a lot of a book by Vladimir Megre. It's actually quite famous. It has to do with communities, which is a subject that we briefly talked about. And it talks about the Vedic culture, but not the Vedic Indian culture. It was rather a world widespread culture that was called the Vedic culture, just coincidentally with what we know as Vedic astrology from India. Anyhow, so in this Vedic culture that existed more than 10,000 years ago, according to the heroine of the book, the main purpose of the mother was actually to discover, as you're saying, it was the culture of the Native Americans. The main purpose of the mother was to discover what the talents of the child are. Nothing else, not to provide it food. I mean, naturally this, of course, but the main role of women was to see and nurture the talents of the child.
Beautiful. Exactly the same. Yeah. And in that kind of society, every individual is seen and respected for who they are, regardless of how they are or who they are. In Native American culture, they had two spirits. These were men who liked to dress as women, or women who liked to do the activities of men. And today we call them gay and lesbian, but the Native Americans, they were sacred people because they had two spirits. So there's a history of sacredness of each kind of person. Every person has a contribution to make. Now, spiritually, we know this, but the society doesn't know this yet. Society is still based on 10,000 years of bad programming. And so we have to sort of fight against that programming. We have to dig out the beliefs that are false inside of ourselves in order to become truly authentic. And this is what we do in our men's circles. It's what women do in women's circles. And there's also couples circles where we're trying to work out this problem that we've all been programmed with false beliefs, false myths, false roles, and to find our truth and our authenticity again. Who am I really? How do I show up? How do I relate to other people? And am I relating in a way that is supportive of the whole, or is it detrimental to the whole or detrimental to myself? So these are the more important questions. They're the moral and ethical questions that we need to ask for ourselves and in community both.
You wrote a book called Menlightenment. Just going to show the cover. A book for awakening men. What is the book about?
This book I wrote many, many years ago in the early days of the men's movement. And it was basically a way for men to become better men. And the original idea was if you want to attract a really good woman, become a better man. So it was kind of counter to the pickup artist movement that was happening. Like, hey, here's how to go get women in bars and get their phone numbers and start dating them and having sex with them. I was saying, hey, if you want that, nothing wrong with that. But if you want that, become a better man. Don't just learn how to use pickup lines. So it was basically a lot of different suggestions for how to become a better man. Join a men's group, take an initiation program, study psychology, study your own psychology, dance, do yoga. So it's really all the suggestions for how a man can find his way in a relational world that is attractive to a real relationship, to a sincere and good relationship, rather than just going out and getting sex when you want it.
Mm-hmm. Would you then say that it's very similar to a woman finding herself? Would this book serve a woman just as well, or is it specifically targeted to men? What is the difference?
It was written for men, because there are certain resources that men need that are different than a woman needs. Women naturally tend to get together into groups, and it's easier for them to do that. Men are trained to be individuals, and so when you're trained to be individualistic, the rugged individual is one of the myths of Western culture. John Wayne, going out and killing the Indians and killing the bad guys. That culture still infuses us in many ways. Now we have the Elon Musks of the world, the super rich entrepreneurs. They're now the rugged individuals who have done it their way, and they decide, and they're we put them in this glorious position and worship them almost like gods and goddesses. But we need to bring all that down and say, how do we relate to each other as people? How do men need to relate to men? Not see them as competitors, but see them as brothers. How do we relate to women? Not seeing them as someone to conquer, but a partner. It's a partnership culture rather than a domination culture. So yes, there's many suggestions that would serve women in that book, but it's primarily written for the male mind.
Mm-hmm. And so would you say that this inclination of men to be more individualistic is also programmed, or is it an innate brain structure? Because this is what I've also read in whatever this book was, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus. I think there was one book and there was a continuation. It was the difference of the structure of the male and the female brains.
Yeah, John Goody's work. Yeah, he's a friend of mine. So this question of nurture or nature has been around in psychology for a long time. How much is inborn instinct or brain structure? How much is socialized and culturalized? And everything I've read comes down to it's about 50-50. That part of it is our internal structure. Men have a brain in a lot of ways driven by testosterone. Women have a brain primarily oriented toward progesterone and so estrogen. Thank you. And so we certainly have those instincts biologically, culturally, individually, socially, religiously. We are packed with tens of thousands, perhaps hundreds of thousands of beliefs on top of the structure that's already there. And so we're complicated beings. And this is why in my clear beliefs method, we treat a being as a multidimensional being, having multidimensional experiences which form multidimensional beliefs. We're complicated. And so everything we can do to move ourselves forward toward more authenticity, toward more spirituality, toward more communing with other people and working with others and making community. Every step counts. Every step is important. So, how do you fix people? You don't. You just get them on the right path and keep them on the path.